We will start by using any Gatsby site. In this case, this site was created using the starter that you can see here. One way to create a new plugin is by creating a new folder inside our site. We create a folder called plugins, cd into it, and then create a new site using Gatsby starter plugin. We can name this Gatsby source Bootstrap API. We can open the file Gatsby node.js and add our first function, export source nodes. This will be an async function, and we can test it out by just simple console log. Now, to see this test, we simply add this new plugin to the file Gatsby config of the original site. We execute the build script, and then we can see the result in console. Now we recall some library or package that allow us to fetch external data. In this example, we will use a REST API, and the node-fetch package allow us to use a very similar API as in the browser. Now that it's installed, we can use it in our file. To this example, we will use the Bootstrap API to get the episode for some podcast. This API will return all the episodes for some podcast, but requires authentication based on token. Now, we can replace our console log by using fetch to request the data. So we create a new variable called response that will be equal to await fetch, and as a parameters, we pass the API for the Bootstrap podcast and add the second parameter as the headers with the token for the authorization. To protect our token, we will use just the m file and .m package to load it. Then we can get JSON object from the response by using await response.json. And to test this out, we can just execute the build and check the console with our result. Now that we have an array of episodes, we can make this available to Gatsby by using the createNode method provided by their API. To begin, we will add some parameters to our function, starting by actions. Then we had to loop over our array of episodes, and to do that we will just use for each. With that, we will have access to each episode, and we can create a new node for Gatsby using createNode. CreateNode is a function part of the actions argument. To this method, we should pass all of the data that we need from our episode, and we will do that by using the structuring. Then we need to create an ID. To do that, we will use the createNodeID method from the Gatsby API. CreateNodeID receives a unique string that represents each node. We will create a new constant called nodeType that will equal to a string podcast episode, and then we will use this as part of the createNodeID call within a template literal to add the ID from the episode provided by the API. We also had to add another parameters as the parent that will be null, the children that will be an empty array, and a required object called internal that have some attributes like type that will be the same node type, the content that will be a stringified object for the episode, and the content digest that is created by using the function called createContentDigest that is available through the arguments of the source node function and that use the entire episode as an argument. Now we can execute the build, but to really see if this function works, we can use Gatsby develop and check the GraphQL Explorer. Here we can see there are two new queries, one called old podcast episode and another called podcast episode. We can try one of that and see all of our episodes. In summary, we take the data fetched from the Bootstrap API and create a new node for each one of that. To do this, we use some of the arguments of the source node method, like createNodeID and createContentDigest. With these variables, we create the node, the content, and the internals attribute that provide us with new queries that allow us to see the content of our podcast to be used in our site.